All right, let's get into it. I'm recording on Resurrection Sunday and I'm hungry. So we're gonna get through the pod, okay? I'm gonna just hop right into it. What up, crew? What's good? It's your girl Sade, ready for another episode of the Crew Book Club podcast. It is Resurrection Sunday while I'm recording. I just hope that you had, by the time you listen to this, it will be after. So I'm hoping, you know what, let me start over. I ain't feeling that intro on the recording. Okay. What up, crew? What's good? It's your girl Sade checking in for another episode of the Crew Book Club podcast, where I read the books you should read but don't have the time to. In this episode, we will be getting into We Should All Be Millionaires by Richard Rodgers. Yes. And our Who Gon Check Me Boo is coming from Prayers and Promises for a Woman. So I can't wait to read that because it's going to talk about something I feel like we forget about, the conversation of health. And, We Should All Be Millionaires chapters is chapter 7, $1 Million Value, and chapter 8, $1 Million Pricing. Okay, and pricing is something that I struggle with doing, especially as an entrepreneur and also a new entrepreneur from the podcast perspective. Like, how do I prove my value? Because people don't realize all the hard work you've been doing behind the mic before you even was brave enough to get on the mic. All the books you've already read, all the work and blood and sweat and tears you've been putting into how you transform and help people. Like, how do you charge that? Because people like to see physical results. People don't understand the inner that it took me, and I'm just learning how to be more vulnerable. And so that's a challenge because one-on-one, I could be vulnerable all day. And there's also this balance of being vulnerable enough to the people, but not giving people full access. And that is what I am getting better at. Okay, so let's just hop into it. And talking about getting better at things is always a great responsibility to be better for yourself, and that is definitely mental. So I'm thankful to have the partnership with BetterHelp.com, who is the sponsor of this episode, where you can get 10% off your first month of therapy, professional therapy. Okay, let me tell you guys, I have used BetterHelp in the past, and it is absolutely helpful. Okay, I told y'all I'm the person who go to therapy, take breaks, and go to therapy. And this year I was like, okay, I need to make the commitment to go consistently, because when I get to the point where I need to go back, I need to talk to somebody every week until I feel like I'm straight. But that's just not a healthy way. So even if I just go every week where everything is still good, I feel like that is best. Okay, so click the link in the show notes, betterhelp.com/crewlove, betterhelp.com/crewlove. Okay, so already let's get into our first segment of the show. Who gonna check me, boo? God is. He is always checking us, and we deserve a good check. Okay, listen, I love things health. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to talk about health in a sense of, we think of just regular exercise routines on how to keep our body weight, how to our bodies healthy, you know, through sleep, eating healthy, drinking water, resting, knowing the risk factors and the productivity of our health from a mental perspective by getting therapy, from the physical perspective by working out and eating right. But there's something that is missing from a national, international conversation, and that is your spiritual health. And spiritual health is just like going to the gym and lifting the weights. You take a day off, you take 2 days off. The longer you take off, the harder it is to get back into it. And I want us to realize the most important part of your health is your spiritual health. The same priority you put on finishing the water and going to the gym and the resting, I need you to put that same priority on your spiritual health. This is an everyday, daily thing that we have to work. Okay? And there's exercise to these things. That's reading your scripture, praying, and worshiping. And in the prayers and promises for women, it talks about that on a day. So I felt like this would be a great time to share, because we're all a lot of us don't just get right year round. We get right before spring and summer. So we can have the boys and then we go back into, but it shouldn't be like that, because you don't have to work as hard when the new season comes around, okay? Because you've been practicing daily your health. And this is where the maturity of your spiritual health and exercising that thing is so important, because when things do arise, you're not just leaning on Christ when it's the worst. Okay? Because that can be when it's the hardest. All right. So there was a few scriptures that they give. Typically it's 3 to 4 scriptures. In this particular one that I wanted to touch on was Proverbs 3 verses 7 through 8. And it read, "Don't be wise in your own eyes. Have respect for the Lord and avoid evil. That will bring health to your body. It will make your bones strong." And I was just like, wow. Like, to be wise and have respect for the Lord, respect for my well-being, and a way of making me strong is to avoid evil. That will bring health to my body. And it does, because if you think about when you're dealing with something that is so bad, it can make you stress, and that can cause you to stress eat, be unhealthy, not want to work out, put time and rest into yourself. You start to worry, which brings on more stress, and that is not healthy. So and then doing it on your own and without God walking with you, utilizing Him to get you through, that is unhealthy. So bringing your body to health is avoiding the bad situations that you can clearly see. And then when they do arise, the ones that you didn't recognize, but there's red flags in everything that is evil. We just have choice, which God gives us that. Just know we need to be leaning on Christ so it can bring health to our bodies and make our bones strong. So the goal here is to remember your spiritual health. All right? Focus on that. And I like the passage that they had. I'll read it to you. "Healer, I need you. I know what you can do. I've read it and I've seen it. Today, I claim your healing. You know my need. The brokenness in body and spirit of which I pray is not news to you. You are intimately involved, waiting to intercede. I believe you, Lord. I know you can heal me. Boldly, I ask for healing today." And it prompts this question, and I want you to answer this legitly. What healing are you believing God for right now? And I just want to pray, whatever that healing that you're believing in God for, whether it's a physical healing, a mental healing, your spiritual healing, I pray that God intercedes on your life and that He changes you and that you allow Him in to lean onto Him to guide you and walk you through. Know that God is always with you. Always. No matter how bad it looks, no matter how impossible it seems, just know when you're partnered with God, anything is possible. All right, so, and I believe that in Jesus' name. And if I can get an amen from the congregation, amen. Okay, so work on that spiritual health, okay? So that was the Who Gon Check Me Boo. He is always checking us. And that is why we need to be checked. Okay, so I want to shout out Audible. Thank you so much for partnering with me. You guys, you can listen to this book on Audible. The link is in the show notes. I know we can't all get a hard copy and write it down, but at least you can get the cliff notes from me, and then you can hear the entire book. And I heard it's really good. My cousin listened to it on Audible, and she got through it pretty quickly. But literally after she finished, she was just like, it was really good on Audible. It motivated me, especially after hearing you talk about it. Now I want to buy the book. You see, you listen to me, then you listen to the book on Audible, and then you go buy it, okay? I have all that for you in your show notes, okay? All right, well, talking about the book, let's hop into it. Remember, we just did chapter 6. That was end of part 1 of We Shall All Be Millionaires. And part 1, I forgot the title, but part 1 of the book was called, it was called $1 Million Behavior, because we have to recognize the behavior, check the behavior, practice getting the behavior done. And once we have that, we can get into the roadmap, right? Because we prepared our minds for it. So chapter 7 is called dun dun dun, $1 Million of Value. And the beginning of the book, each chapter, she has a quote, and this quote comes from Cardi. It says, "You better realize your worth and stop settling for bare minimum, half-ass SHIT." Okay, and we are not going to settle for bare minimum. First of all, God don't even want you settling for bare minimum, okay? And oh, this reminds me, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about, like, you know, having God as number one, and also still reading books like this that may not even mention God, right? The thing is, when you have that relationship with Christ, a lot of this stuff is already in the Bible. Money in there, how you need to handle that, marriage stuff, what you need to do next, depending on God on your next moves, it's all in the Bible. We just take these books that we are blessed with. These authors are blessed. These are gifts in these books for us to digest and put God into everything. Just because the author may not talk about God, that doesn't mean that we cannot apply God's word to it. So when I think about you better realize your worth and stop settling for bare minimum, half behind stuff, Cardi, okay, God, that is a word in God itself. God wants you to realize your worth as his child, and he does not want you to settle, all right? So it all aligns, all right? And I like that there's a lot that was highlighted in chapter 8, but I really want to focus on the emphasis on imposter syndrome and how it shows up in different ways, okay? On page 127, she dives into that. And there's about 8 examples she gives, but I'm going to talk about the 2 that directly affects me. One was receiving an amazing opportunity, but chalking it up to lucky timing or just knowing the right people, as if having the right people in your corner and cultivating strong relationships has nothing to do with how awesome you are. But I digress. See, when things happen, before I had a really deep relationship with Christ, and it was just like I talk to God every now and then, I would chunk it up to it's just perfect timing. I was in the right place at the right time. No. It's God in everything, and then it's what I took the extra mile to be obedient in, the people that God placed into my life. And I was just like, no matter what, it's always God, right? And then on top of that, it's the obedience that I took when God told me to move. And I met some new friends a few years ago, and you know how people say, oh, no new friends, but I was like, God, I'm praying for you to put the people into my life that's going to take me to the next level, friendships that understand entrepreneurship, that is on the path that I'm on, that will understand, and to build new relationships. And he said, well, for me to send you that, you need to be acting as such. And the moment that I started acting as such, God sent me those friends and those people. So stop chalking up amazing opportunities as just lucky timing and just knowing the right people. God gave you obedience and discernment and put you that work. You and God were partnered together, and y'all put yourself he and you put yourself in where you need to be with the right people. Goodness, getting tongue-tied. Okay, the other one was working for free or undercharging for your services because you're terrified that you suck at whatever services you're providing. So you figure if you only charge $15 instead of $1,500, then nobody can get mad at you when they realize that you suck. This is the most bat crap, crazy nonsense, but so many of us women do this. It's wild. Yes, it is so wild. Now, I was having a conversation with my coach, and we were talking about value. And she was like, why are you charging that right now for this? And I was just like, well, I thought that's where it should be because I put in a lot of work. She was like, there's levels to this, and that we need to figure that out to see how we can connect the pieces and make the value match up. And so it's also just realizing where you're at. But this goes to bringing God in it of, okay, God, what do you want me to do? Is this service where I don't charge and I do this? And let me tell y'all, even though I just had an experience with something, I was doing something for free. And I was charging for it at first. And I said, you don't have to worry about it. They still end up giving me what I originally charged and more on top of that. And I was just like, see, when you're just obedient, he will provide. Okay? And that just, I'm out of that. I'm thankful I'm out of that mindset. Now, God, there is order now. Don't get me wrong. There is order. Just be obedient. If God tells you to serve in this capacity and it's not a price tag on that thing, do that. And then God will give you discernment on what to charge in need be time. Okay? All right. So, ooh, this was good. Or like, I haven't had this, but I've had friends who experienced this, and I'm going to read it. Another identifier of different ways to imposter syndrome shows up. It says, like me, dreaming about creating something amazing, but not believing you're capable of leading the project yourself, and then getting yourself into inadequate partnerships that end up costing you money, time, and sanity. A lot of times, it's stuff that you can already do, but because you're timid and what you believe you can do, you end up partnering people that is actually not bringing any value to it, and they're leeching off of you. Okay? So this is where you really have to lean into God and be like, okay, God, how much can I do on my own? And give him discernment on when I need to bring someone else in. And I've seen this happen where people get into these major partnerships and it's not even working out. They end up doing a bucket of work, and then they're, like she said, costing money, time, and your sanity. And it's not worth it. So I love something that my coach was telling me. She was like, this is why it's so important to do trial and put short-term things on partnerships and contracts so you can renegotiate and then have an opportunity to decide. So instead of going in hot, like, okay, let's do a 5-year contract. No, maybe it's 30 days. Maybe it starts off 90 days or 6 months, depending on what the project is. But we need to be careful on who we partner up with. Okay, so I love those examples of imposter syndrome showing up in different ways. So that way you can recognize them when they show up and you can have some discernment. All right, I like this on page 130. It talks about how to purge imposter syndrome for your life. All right, let's talk about those. 1, acknowledge that you're not alone and your brain is not broken. Maya Angelou, despite winning numerous literary awards, always thought her next book would be a failure. Even so, in interviews, she would say, you can feel these insecurities and refuse to let them stop you. So stop. Your brain is not broken. And you are not alone. Look at Maya Angelou went through that. Okay? Another way to purge imposter syndrome from your life. Get into the habit of tracking your victories as they happen. Keep a record, okay? Keep a record of your wins, big and small, instead of letting them zip by and go unnoticed. The more you track your victories and record them, the sooner you feel. Use evidence to combat insecurities. When I'll be very transparent. Real estate is amazing. But at the same time, it can be daunting where you could go some months without closing. And so though in those periods, I go back and read my customer reviews. I pull out the checks that I did, and I'm like, I done did this. God provided every time. Or like I go back and read some things that I wrote down about in my journal on days that I know that were really, really good. Keep track of those things to re-empower and re-encourage yourself. All right. Another way to purge imposter syndrome is get therapy. Okay. It says you might need traditional talk. You might prefer a group of therapy, or maybe you want something that's not strictly therapy, but feels therapeutic to you. Like maybe join a club filled with women who are determined to make more money, or a prayer group, something that will feel therapeutic. You know, like I said, we have the partnership with betterhelp.com/crewlove. Get into therapy. Another one, which was so surprising to me that I never even thought of how to purge imposter syndrome in your life, is become an athlete. You know, I don't know, like, why is grown behind people still playing in these little football leagues and soccer on weekend? But this actually helps with imposter syndrome. It said 94% of women who hold C-level positions are former athletes. Okay, so she gave other examples. Maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe it's training for a 5K walk, run, race, learn how to surf, sign up for archery lessons, or give birth to a child. Now that ain't no temporary sport. I can't just practice, play, and come back to that every Saturday. So I don't know if the having a child part, but maybe that could be a form of keeping track of your victories. Because, child, it's a victory to wake up every morning as a mama and get through the day to take care of a child. It's a full-time job. So maybe put that in the category of tracking your victories. One of the things that I did that felt very accomplishing was the Spartan race. After I finished that, I felt like I could do anything. And it was motivating. So I can see how becoming an athlete can add to helping you purge the imposter syndrome. So those were really, really good. Check those out. Those are on page 130 if you have the book. But you can also listen to that in Audible as well. All right, so that was chapter 7. I'm going to end it there. There was plenty of other things like what can you do that is extremely valuable. There were some few points there. So it talked about zones of excellency. There's so much good, but those are the ones I really wanted to focus on imposter syndrome because I feel like I've dealt with that and I know a lot of people who have. All right, so chapter 8, $1 million pricing, baby. Let's get into it. Page 147, it states, in case you think raising your prices is only for women working as entrepreneurs or freelancers, think again. A salary employee can raise your prices too. All right. She told a story, and I'll give you some tidbits. She said she offered a salary of $75,000 per year what she was trying to hire a CFO, if I'm not mistaken. I forgot to highlight that part. But anywho, she was trying to hire somebody for a role, and she was trying to keep at the budget of $75,000 per year. So she asked her how much she was looking for, and the person said, I'm looking for $150,000. And she was like, well, I told her the max I would offer was $80,000, and I explained all my reasons, and she explained all her reasons she felt she was worth $150,000. And she was like, I could offer her $100,000. That was the highest I could go. And then the lady replied that she was trying to hire, she couldn't commit to the role for $100,000. So then Rachel sighed, and then she was like, this girl is wiping my behind to the floor. So they went several rounds of respectful negotiations, and she was playing hardball for a good reason. She knew the value she was bringing to the table, but so did Rachel. She already knew her value. She was just trying to get her at a lesser price. All right. So after some time, we finally came to the agreement on a 6-figure salary and additional week of vacation. All right. So this is the thing. You have to know your value. That's what that told me. And you have to be able to articulate to others your value and stand in that. And also on the page, it said, on page 149, it says, However, my new program, was a program director, presented me with facts and figures about how she would benefit my company and clients, the amount of work she would take off my plate, and intellectual property she would add to the company's value. As a result, I wound up paying her far more than I initially planned. Rachel started off at $75,000, and this lady knew her value, knew how to articulate her value, and got the salary that she required, $150,000. So that can work for you as an entrepreneur, freelancer, as same as you in a 9-to-5 corporate. And I don't like to say 9 to 5 in a corporate setting, because some of y'all corporate work way more than 9 to 5. All right. So I love how she did that. She said the key in both situations is recognizing your skills and experience. Learn how to communicate the value you provide and ask for what you want. Regardless of your current career situation, you can start earning significantly more than you currently do. And this is, for me, with real estate, a lot of agents be going, oh, I'll do it for 4 or 5%. It's like, to me, it's just like, do you really know your value? Like, I know mine. I'm gonna work hard for that 6%, and that 6% doesn't always all go to me. 3 of it is going to the buyer's agent. But because I know how this market works, I know the value I'm gonna put. I know how much time and effort. I know how much money I'm gonna put into this. I deserve every bit of that 3% of the 6% that I'm asking you for as a seller. Okay, so know your value, know your worth, and know how to articulate and communicate. And she gives so many different ways to do that in the book. Like value-based pricing, she discusses, and how to articulate that, how to raise your price when you double your prices, how everyone wins. And I want to get into this part of it. Take out the mind trash, because this is the things that can stop us from asking for more. Here are some objections you might be thinking, and here is a response she gave us. On page 157, she says, this is something we would probably say, but I can't raise my prices to this amount because nobody in my industry charges that much. That's just how it's done. And she says, do you want to be a bargain bin service provider or the creme de la creme? Okay. Another thing we could be telling ourselves is, I don't want to charge more because I don't want to be inaccessible to the people who need me the most. Ooh, child. Okay. First, she says, not everyone's going to be able to afford you, and that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's desired. It says charge what you're worth. Okay. So that was just, oh, here's another one. I don't want to charge more because I'm nervous about clients being angry, feeling like they didn't get their money's worth. Okay. That's okay. She said, I've had a few situations in the past where a client wasn't happy, so I took some time to figure out why. I listened to their grievances, and I fixed the situation. You can transform disappointment into a win-win victory. This goes back to communicating. Another one she had was, but people already think I'm too expensive. She said, oh, well, too bad for them. Perhaps your pricing will inspire them to hustle and gather the funds they need to hire you. Trust me, if somebody want to work with you, they're going to figure out a way how to pay you. All right. The last one I want to say is, this is something you could be telling yourself, but what if I raise my prices and then something bad happens, like villagers come after me with a flaming pitchfork, or I get hate mail, or all my clients fire me? This is a person who dives into the mind of the what if. And she says, how about you just try to see what happens? None of the horrifying things you fear will actually happen. Most likely, everything will be just fine. Okay, so do that and just know your wealth will bring great things. Okay, so that was some really, really good things in chapter 8. Like I said, there's plenty more. I just give you the really good cliff notes out of the chapter that I truly connect with. And then you could decide whether you want to order the book or listen to it on Audible, which both of those opportunities is a link in bio. And with the Audible, if you click the link and you partner with me, you get 30 days access, unlimited access to the premium prescription of the Amazon Audible experience. Okay? So let's get into, that was chapter 8, $1 Million Pricing, with our book, We Should All Be Millionaires by Richard Rodgers. You can order the book in the show notes. All right, so let's get into the challenge of the week. I'm in my zone. I'm in my zone. I'm vibing. I'm in my zone. I'm in my zone. That is the challenge of the week. In my zone. Inspired on page 135. And this is where I was talking about the zones. Understand your zone of incompetence, zone incompetence, zone of competency, zone of excellence, and zone of genius. You need to be working in your zone of genius in order to deliver maximum value and make millions. There are 4 zones, and they came from the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And I'm going to order that. The 4 zones are zone of incompetence. You are engaging in tasks and work that you inherently do not understand or are not skilled at. You know, you're typically pretty obvious to you and the others that you are not good at this work, okay? It is also inefficient for you to continue this kind of work because your lack of understanding or skill means it takes much more effort and time to complete this work, whereas someone else could do it quickly and efficiently, okay? So this is something you need to source out. Like for me, I had to source out the website. It was a waste of time and I just could not do it. Thank God, this is where God sent me. My cousin, who was skilled in that, did it for nothing. Just know when I drop her name, y'all gonna want to use her. Because the website is dope. www.thecrewbookclub.com, where you can order your bookmark, The Crew Book Club, and my quote on the back. Go out and make the best decisions for you, and no one else will. All right. The other zone of is excellence. This is the tricky one. Because you are doing work as which you are very skilled. Often it is work that you train for. This is also work for which the world praises you and pays you well. For these reasons, zone of excellence work is often hard to give up. This is what people will call your golden ticket. Many people stay in their zone of excellence because they're afraid to leave or don't think it's possible to do anything else. Not golden ticket, golden handcuffs. That's what it was. Your situation is pretty darn good, so why reach for more? Expect your heart keeps whispering, this isn't quite it. I've been there. When I worked for North Shore as a visual merchandiser, I was so good at it. The money was decent for living in the state of Florida, and I saw the possibility, and it was really a golden handcuffs. But let me tell you about God. He will make you so uncomfortable where you have no choice but to leave this situation because those golden handcuffs become a pain in your behind. All right. Now, this is a zone that we want to be in. Okay, in the zone of genius. In this zone, you are doing work for which you have natural ability. When you are doing this work, you get into a flowing state and do not struggle to create. That is the podcast for me. Anything dealing with the podcast, from social media to being on the mic to editing, any aspect of podcasting, I'm excited about, and it comes with ease. Yeah, some of the stuff might be difficult to learn, but it's not like I have to force myself to do it. I think about it all night, all day. I dream about where it could go. I'm always coming up with dope ideas. It just comes natural to me. And she talks about, in the zone of genius, she says, most people try to get better at things they are really bad at. I say, forget what you're bad at and double down on what you're great at. This is where the big money and the career satisfaction is. And I wouldn't even say just that. This is where satisfaction is. So the challenge of the week comes with the action steps to your genius on page 138. The action step, which is, we call it the challenge of the week, is discover your zone of genius, okay, by following the call. If you listen closely, there are projects, dreams, and big ideas that have called you for years. If you look back at your history, you'll find clues in your childhood where you are drawn in similar work that is calling you now. The nagging desire might not reveal exactly what your zone of genius is at first, but if you take the very first tiny step, it will begin to unravel itself. You know, this is so true. Reading has always been my thing. I love reading and talking about books. I just never thought to start a podcast on books about murder mysteries. I just was like, no, ain't nobody gonna get it like how I get it or vision of how I vision it. And then or talking, like I always got in trouble for talking in class. And so this podcast just took what I already knew I loved to do naturally and combined it into one thing. And those things turned into other purposes that I needed to accomplish that made the creative zone of genius and applying all this knowledge you wanted to share and help people grow. Like all of that has come into one, and it has led from one thing to the next. It's like God is this guiding light. But the thing is, you have to take the first step. So this week, I want you to discover your zone of genius. All right? Go out and do that, y'all. Somebody waiting for you and you're a genius. All right? So we're going to get into some advice. What would the crew do? Ask advice. And someone posted this because I think last week I had a lot of little clips, more than usual, about God, because usually I just do who gonna check me boo God is, but it was so much good Christ content, and I couldn't help but share the goodness of Christ. And someone said, did you always have a relationship with God? And at first I was just kind of like, well, what you mean? Like, I went into this rabbit hole of like, are you mad because I'm talking more about God now? You must haven't been following me long, da 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 da. But then I was just like, no, this is the perfect opportunity to do what God has asked me to do, share his testimony, because clearly they're watching and they're intrigued enough to ask me this question, and I'm thankful for that. And so I was like, I'm going to just answer it on the pod. Did you always have a relationship with God? No, I did. I have religion practices in association to God, but I never had a relationship with God like I have now, because I had to get out the state of just going to church and praying to him when I felt like it. I had to get in the habit of seeking him daily to have a relationship with him, because I was just so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I knew God was always around, but it's just like, no, I need you to be in front at all times and help me, because clearly I'm not making the right decisions. And so where my relationship with God is now, is nothing how it was before. So no, I did not always have a relationship with God. It's just, I encourage you to seek a relationship with him. And if you look at the definition of relationship with God and religion, you're gonna see the difference, and you're gonna experience him different when you actually put in the work with him. Okay, so that was what would the crew do. Ask advice. You can always email the crew at gmail.com. The crew book club at gmail.com, or DM me on Instagram at the crew book club. All right, so you know I can't leave this episode without giving you a quote of the week. The quote of the week comes from me. Okay, and I'm saying, put God first in all you do, and he will bring you great wealth to do great things. All right, go out there, crew. Build your relationship with Christ. Build great wealth and do great things. And I will see you right here next week on the Crew Book Club podcast. Hey.